Thanks for joining me on my 24th episode of Guitar Players in Isolation. Crazy to think we're coming in on 1 year of not gigging live. So I'm going to keep interviewing amazing guitar players that got their start in Southern Ontario. I'm thrilled to have Gordie Johnson as my guest today. Gordie is the leader and founder of the chart-topping band Big Sugar. And he's also been the founder of the band Grady and Sit Down Servant. And has even played bass with the band Wide Mouth Mason. He is known for his kick-ass slide, bass licks, and double neck guitars. But he got to start playing jazz, and he put the band together to back up Molly Johnson. And that's how I first discovered him. Make sure to click on the subscribe button and the bell notification button, and leave a comment. This really helps the YouTube algorithms. Let's check out this clip of Gordie Johnson ripping up his Big Sugar's breakthrough tune, Ride Like Hell. And then we'll kick off into the interview. Gordie, how are you?
I'm doing all right.
Oh, that's great, man. So you are like the one musician I know who's just making the most out of this pandemic COVID situation. I mean, you're just killing it. You're doing everything. You might be doing more than you would if there wasn't COVID.
I think that's true, man. I mean, our whole social media thing was really just related to upcoming gigs prior to the pandemic. But once we got in lockdown, and we took it very seriously, you know, like we really locked ourselves in here. I was already quite busy in the studio making stuff. So I just started, you know, I started doing all our graphic design and art layout and things like that for a lot of different stuff. I was already starting to make our own videos. So I just dove in deep, and I got all the latest software and got myself up to speed with it and just started making videos. We filmed it ourselves, just recorded it ourselves, started doing some live stream stuff, which was super fun at first. But man, when you see enough of these live streams, it's like most live streams start like this, don't they? Where's the thing that I push the thing? And it's like, I can't, man. Looking at musicians with furrowed brows, staring sort of somewhere off camera, like, come on, brethren, that's not entertaining to anyone.
Or they got the laptop is really low, and so you kind of got this ghostly,
chin view. You got chin vision.
Yeah.
I've always been opposed to lip syncing and hand syncing as well, which, I mean, it doesn't really matter to a lot of people. They want to see the artists they like, and they see them and they hear the song, they see it, they hear it, they believe it. That's fine. Yeah. But for me, you know, from our very first video, the very first Big Sugar video back in the early 90s, I made the production crew record the song when we shot the video. And they're like, well, can we do 3 takes? I'm like, yeah, but pick which one you want, because you're only using one, you know, which upset everybody. But now when I look back at it decades later, it's a good looking video, and it stands out because you're actually seeing people play. I mean, that's how I would like to see my heroes. If I go on YouTube and I look at Frank Zappa or Rush from 1980, or like, you know, any of these things, I want to see dudes play. Yeah, I don't want to see them floating in space. I want to see them playing their instrument. So, you know, the first couple of live streams, we were set up here on the porch, and I had all the bed tracks from the records, and some I had to re-record, and they were playing off the computer, and I would play and sing to them live, although that was a pretty good trick.
Yeah.
But then, you know, iPhones got remarkably better over a short time. So you can get cinematic quality video off of your cell phone So we set up one of our buildings out here as a video production studio and started shooting against a green screen and editing all these things together. So not only am I singing and playing guitar live, when I did the bass track on the bed track, we filmed it. So when you see me playing the bass, it's the actual bass. And when you see me playing the drums, it's the actual drumming.
Oh, good man. Good man. I like that.
You know, I mean, it's all very, you know, I mean, it doesn't matter to everybody, but it matters to me.
No, it's
like,
cool.
I want to see what the dude can play. I mean,
that's cool.
Especially with computers now, you know, Pro Tools and all these things. You can make a monkey play drums and sound great.
Actually, you know, what you're doing by pulling out the tracks, except for the one that you're going to video yourself playing, it's probably, like at your level of playing, it's probably easier than, as you say, hand lipping, syncing to the whole track, right? Because you're not going to get it perfect, like all the bends, but if you're playing it live, it's probably easier and faster. I did make entertainment videos for years. I mean,
and since the 90s, we were making videos, so you get pretty good at it.
Yeah.
But you know, we're also not like other boys. You know, like my playing isn't that repetitive. Like I don't play it exactly the same way every time. Right. So if we did a little live video for, you know, a local, you know, mental health care awareness organization, and then we did the same song later for CTV Ottawa, we shot different videos for it and played the song again. I can play the song again. I wrote the damn thing. I can play it again. So I don't know. It just makes it more immersive, and it just makes it more entertaining. And I think it's made a difference. I mean, our fans certainly seem
it's cool. It's cool. So for those that don't know, I'm talking to you in Austin. Austin is your home. And,
well, you know, we still have a home in Alberta too. So we split our time. You know, over the pandemic, we've been locked in place. You know, more than once, where we just like kind of opened up a little bit. We were at the farm, and then got stranded there for a while. So you know, we're still proud Albertans.
Trudeau's not going to make it easy for you to come home right now, so you're gonna
that's okay. I'm all right with that.
Stay put in the warm. It's much warmer where you are.
It's not going to end soon if we keep messing around.
Exactly.
You know? Like if people are in too big of a hurry, you're going to make it take longer. It's just it's the oldest.
Let's let some of the people know to check it out on YouTube. Kind of similar to what I tried to do back last March when we started this whole thing. I started this Guitar Players in Isolation, focusing mostly on kind of Southern Ontario guys that have gone on and done great things. And even though you're in Austin, you know, when you got serious about your career and it started going, I mean, you were a Toronto guy. You were a Kensington Market, Cameron House, Horseshoe guy. You know.
Well, I spent a lot of time, a lot of my developing years in Windsor and Detroit playing on both sides of the border there. Windsor was an amazing music town. If you were there in the 70s and 80s.
Skip over to
crazy. Well, no, I mean, it was happening on the Canadian side because Detroit was becoming more and more depressed and things were closing and it was dangerous. And you didn't have the disparity in the dollar. And then suddenly you did. So your American dollar is worth more. You can drink 2 years earlier. You know, if you're 19 or 18 or whatever the drinking age was at the time, was 21 in Detroit, it's 19 in Windsor. So all of a sudden Windsor became this, it was like Sodom and Gomorrah, man. It was just crazy. Just people going crazy, and every bar was packed, and you could play 6-7 nights a week.
That's awesome.
Playing, you know, 5 45-minute sets a night. Well, you got chops of steel after that. So that was a great environment to grow up in. So I need to give Windsor, Ontario, its proper due.
It's still Ontario, so it kind of works for my little theme of Canadian guys. Put it that way. We'll stretch out to Canada. But so let's get back to YouTube. You started this thing, GJ in the Sound Shack, which is kind of where you are, and we just touched on it. But you got some great videos, so I would ask guitar players to check it out, because you kind of do, you know, we won't spend time on it because people can just go check it out on your videos. You got a whole rundown thing on how you get your incredible tone. I do want to talk about that a little bit because it is a guitar player thing. And you got some videos showing how to play your songs correctly. I really thought that one with digging in the hole, how you showed how you did it was was pretty amazing. And you kind of quote the BB King thing, you know, like, because a lot of guys were trying to figure out the standard tuning, and you play it in open G with capo on the second, so an A. But you threw out that line like, you know, keep it simple, you know.
No, why do you want to make it so hard?
But
the quote.
What you do is hard. I watched you do it. I mean, you're on the top neck, and then you wham down to the second neck, and you do your slide thing. That's not easy.
Well, you know, the double neck is a very unwieldy instrument, and it takes a minute. Even to this day, I've been playing them for decades. But when you strap it on, there's that. It's like, I guess it's the difference between driving a car and then having your Class A license to drive an 18-wheeler. You know what I mean? Like
your DZ.
Yeah, you're suddenly double clutching and you're hauling, you know, a dual tandem axle, whatever. You know what I mean? It's a completely different thing. Yeah, you're driving. Sure, you're on the highway like everybody else. Sure, it's a different vehicle. So. Yeah, there's just a lot of it's an incredibly versatile instrument, of course, because you have two different necks and you can have very different textures set up on the two things. So I've used it to great effect over the years. I still love it. There's one of them hanging right now. See, it's even for me, man. It does require some. I mean, if you're thinking of going out and buying one, I strongly recommend it. But, you know, that comes with some responsibility. You're going to need to spend some hours flipping switches and having them just under your fingers and knowing where the switches are. If you can play guitar, it's just two guitars. Anyone who can play guitar can play one. It's manipulating it.
There's always a few that show up on like Facebook or Kijiji or Craigslist, because I think a lot of guys try it because, I'll do a Jimmy Page thing. And then it's like, this is fucking heavy.
They're heavy. Yeah, no, you have to really be playing it on purpose. If you're just doing it for the photo shoot, photo shoots take longer than you'd like them to. Yeah, they're heavy. You can set them up. I've seen guys, they put the neck strap peg in different places on the back of it. But even Alex Lifeson, who laid the first double neck I played, Alex laid his on me and said, well, here, take it and check it out. I'm like, wow, unbelievable. When one of your childhood heroes says, here, take my guitar, please. You're like, wow.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you about that. So that's a replica of the one from Farewell to Kings, which you did.
That one is. Yeah. Serial number 3. But
you actually used his.
Yes, the actual Farewell to Kings double neck was in my possession. If you look at the Dig in a Hole video, that's the same. That's the Xanadu guitar. That's the same one that's in the Xanadu videos that you've ever seen.
That must have freaked you out when you get.
It freaked me out, and it still freaks me out because it still doesn't sound true. But he actually got out of playing it for a while because he was starting to get into golf.
Yeah.
Now Al's pretty. He can be pretty dry and pretty funny if you're not paying attention. He can put one over on you. So I don't know if that was him being funny, or if actually that thing was just perilously heavy. And I can see how it would mess with your golf game if you were having to wear it for, an 8-hour rehearsal or something that they were prone to. Then I can see how that would not be a good thing.
So your streams, you mentioned the streams. Let me just rhyme off some guys so people can check this out. Good friend of yours, Colin James, do some stuff. Mm-hmm. And then Jason McCoy, who was the guy who helped set me up to meet you, because I did an interview with him. And some other Canadians I saw on your streams, Sue Foley, who spends a lot of time down in Austin. Mm-hmm. And then Americans. Foley, Warren Haynes and Joe Satriani. So there's a lot to check out on Gordie Johnson's YouTube channel.
And more coming too. I took a bit of a break over Christmas. To be honest, I spent most of 8-9 months doing nothing but cranking out videos. So I was spending a lot of time as a video editor and less time mixing records. And I've recently got busy producing records again, which is also super fun, and this stuff will eventually come out. But for videos, I took a bit of a break, but I've got a bunch of backlog stuff. I've got the Robinson Brothers from the Black Crowes.
Right, yeah.
I did a Pink Floyd song with Rich Robinson. It was something we recorded together.
That's cool.
I did a Rush song in dub. Be like, I've got a bunch of stuff.
You know, the Red Barchetta thing there, they did it.
Oh yeah, no, I took it. Passage to Bangkok. I took it all the way to Big Sugar's world.
Very cool. So the videos you're talking about, did you do these all on your own, which are really cool? The Better It Gets and Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Those were.
I got, because I realized that Pro Tools is not that different from Adobe Premiere. There are a lot of top level video editing platforms out there, but I'm an Adobe guy. We were already using it for graphic design and album cover design and posters and things like that. So it was just a matter of taking a hard swallow and saying, okay, I don't know how to do this. Let me educate myself and just be humble enough to start from scratch and be frustrated and make mistakes.
Yeah.
But as the videos went on, it got easier and I challenged myself some more until we got to, we re-released our album Hemi-Vision from 1996. Right. There was the anniversary of that record. So we put that out with Universal Music and had a great launch of that record on vinyl. So to celebrate that, I re-recorded all of the songs, all of the parts, and got different guest artists and friends like Warren Haynes and Colin James, Jason McCoy, all these people to perform these Hemi-Vision songs with me remotely, where I played and sang live and had them on a split screen. And then I was able to go in and manipulate the video, and we had all kinds of cool animations and stuff in the background. So it really looked pretty good for homemade, it was super ambitious, but we had the great idea of, like, since we're doing it with cell phones and everyone's got a cell phone, let's get our fans to send us video of themselves singing If I Had My Way. If I had my way. And we got like 500 fan videos, like way more than I could possibly use.
In a minute she can turn you inside out. If I had my way, if I had my way, honey, I would take all your promises.
And then just downloading them. Of course, it was an immense amount of data.
Yeah.
And everybody's phone is set to some different setting, and it crashed. It crashed. It was just, the computer was just like sputtering and smoke coming out of it was just horrible. So it completely sidelined the broadcast, which I was able to then go in and correct. You can still watch it on YouTube, the Hemi-Vision live stream, which is really cool. But I mean, we were
it's
ambitious.
A learning curve. It's a learning curve. For me, you got to get the frame rates the same on all the damn cameras. I mean, that's what,
as it turns out.
Yeah.
And there's no telling, because they're not all Apple devices. And we're on an Apple.
25 is not the same from device.
You get in Huawei phones and God knows what other kinds of phones and all this.
Oh, that's cool.
No,
so
it was a disaster.
How big is I got to get into this. How big is the green screen that you're using? Like,
my green screen's about 12 by 12.
So is it on a stand, or you just got it roped up?
No, it's on a frame.
Okay, I got to get one.
Yeah, and it just depending where I need to, like I said, I had one of my buildings here where the studio is set up. For several months, it was just set up as a video production thing, where the green screen was always behind the drums, move the drums out, stand in front. And
oh, that's great.
Play the bass, play the guitar, do backup singers, whatever we had to do, play the organ, all these things.
Yeah, I put, for my band, we did a great song that my singer wrote called Broken Wing. And I did it with just one camera, the Canon M5. That's kind of what I'm using. Mm-hmm. And it just kind of shot the song about 7-8 times. And then, you splice it all together. But you can do, pretty decent stuff, like dirt cheap on your own.
But your imagination is your only
it's fun.
thing holding you back, and it really is a matter of being brave enough to
you got to spend the time.
And go,
but you go on
there's
YouTube.
there's some great stuff on YouTube, isn't there?
That's what I was just going to say. You can learn anything.
Yeah, there's a couple of guys who really can give you some great insight. There's a cat named Peter McKinnon. If you've ever seen his stuff on YouTube, check out Peter McKinnon,
it out
because
if I haven't.
he's a couple of years worth of Premiere Pro tutorials, and his way of teaching, it's just like hanging with a bro, and he gives you these great insights and tips, but it really feels like you're getting led in on a secret, which is that fun. He's funny, and and the way he edits his tutorials is also, it's like, it's a tutorial about video editing, so your editing better be the shit. You know what I mean? So, which it is. Right. And he talks about photography and lenses and composition and camera. Like, it's a really sharp
The
cat,
pandemic's
so really
allowed us to learn as much as you want. You know, it's kind of giving you a little bit of freedom to really open up and learn stuff that you just didn't have time to learn, you know, and it's there to learn. Like, it's easy. The better it gets in Wonder Woman, the videos I just mentioned. So they're off your new album, which came out just kind of as the pandemic launched, Eternity Now. So everybody can go out and buy that. And what's cool, you'll tell us about it. It's also out on vinyl, and you did some cool shit with the vinyl. And it's, you know, and Alex Lifeson plays the kickoff tune on it.
The theme song, it really was a tribute to Rush and to that sound, that classic sound from.
Sounds like Big Money.
1980. Well, it's
that vibe, not the song. Yeah,
it sort of has the vibe too of anything from Moving Pictures. You know, I've got Moog Taurus pedals and the double neck, the 12s and the 6, and all that stuff. You know, when you get to those synth bass notes, and it's also got a sort of cosmic sort of theme to it. And I thought, well, I'm either going to be sending him a link to it with an apology, or I should just, maybe I could make him complicit. And asked him if he would play the solo on it. What an amazing cat. Like, how busy are you? You're Alex Lifeson of Rush. And he sent me like so many tracks, like acoustic guitars and banjos and a little weird Turkish instrument and all these great textures of like, I'm using it. I put all that Big Al stuff in there. Oh my God, what a treat to like be looking at your mixing desk and going, that says Big Al right there.
Sounds like you've got quite the relationship over the years with Alex, that's for sure.
No, he's a real mentor. You know, I mean, and he's a very benevolent mentor, and he's always got a witty word and something funny. And he's a good humored cat, and he sort of takes I don't know, he's such a down-to-earth cat, and you'd think he'd be the farthest thing from it. I mean, his music is certainly not down-to-earth. It's definitely from another galaxy, but as a person, very grounded. And it's amazing to me how many of my guys who were heroes to me when I was younger, and as I've met them and they've become contemporaries, how many of them are just really down-to-earth, sweet. Joe Satriani. Yeah. There isn't a sweeter man than Joe Satriani. I'd let him babysit my kids. He's such a sweetheart.
Hey, come on. Guitar players are good guys.
No, we're not, Jim. Not by and large, no. By and large, there are a lot of guitar players. I wouldn't leave my pets with them.
Put it this way. The ones I interview are good guys.
Oh, of course.
So my favorite song off your new album is Everything You Wanted to Be.
Everything You Want It to Be. Thank you.
I really think that one. It's kind of, and what's cool, because I saw you in another interview talk about this, not about that song, but to me, it's Beatlesque. And you mentioned on this thing that you used a lot of the Mellotron. So that's, I mean, Lucy in the Skies with Diamonds is kind of like the main Mellotron thing ever, right? So,
I got really into the Mellotron several years ago, and I started collecting samples and sounds and different versions of the Mellotron, and we've used it to great effect. But for Eternity Now, the album, I really took the concept of there are no keyboards on the record. I didn't want any, like there's no piano, there's no organ, there's no this, there's no that. Everything came from the Mellotron.
Oh, okay, yeah, because there's a lot of cool texture going on that song.
Symphonic sounds, choirs, all these things that all live in the Mellotron library of sounds. So I limited myself to that. It's like, well, let's make a record where that is sort of plays a starring role. And sometimes limiting your color palette, you get a more interesting result. So that's, we definitely made use of that. And that song, I guess it's Beatlesque in a way, but also, living in Texas, Doug Somm is a big influence and that border sound, that border rock kind of sound, and what redneck hillbilly hippies were doing with Tejano music and psychedelic music at the same time. You know,
it's got that feel.
You have this great melding of all these different flavors that you wouldn't think would work together, and that becomes its own genre, that Texas border rock. So we were also highly influenced by that.
So I know you've talked about this quite a bit on some other interviews, but that album, Eternity Now, it took eternity. It was in the works for some time because, let's face it, you went through some hardship a few years back with a key member of Big Sugar that passed away. Gary Lowe passed away a few years ago. So that kind of stalled a few things. But then you, your manager, your bandmate, your wife, the person I coordinated this interview with, Alex, you guys worked together and kind of put what we can download now.
Well, we had to have a heart-to-heart. Like, believe me, I was as low as a person could get at a point where I couldn't even see a way forward, or why. Yeah. Why would we, music and rock and roll and all this stuff takes on a curious irrelevance when you're faced by the death of your closest friends. And it put us in an existential funk there for a minute. But what are you going to do? I mean, you can't, I guess you can just stay there. I mean, people do, but we really wanted to see a way out, So we had to reassess everything we were doing. It's like, well, if you even want to do it, how do you want to do it? Yeah. Why are we doing it? So we had to sort of do a reboot and ask ourselves, why are we going forward with this? How are we going to do it? Who are we going to surround ourselves with? Let's just tighten it up and bring it inside and make music on our own terms, which has been fantastic. I mean, we were doing that anyway, but it really put us in a healthier frame of mind. And since my mental reboot, about 4 or 5 years ago, it's amazing. Productivity. I work a third as many hours and I get so much more done.
Oh, that's great.
Even with the pandemic, we were sort of better prepared for the pandemic because we'd already weathered some hardship.
Yeah, you went through the shit, so it was kind of like,
we were used to going, okay, existential threats. What are we going to do here?
After the passing, you did a tribute show here in Toronto, out on the Danforth, which was quite incredible. There's lots of clips on YouTube, and that's actually what made me think of getting you on this program, because I saw a clip, and I included it in my interview with Jason McCoy, where the Roadhammers were playing with you at the tribute. Everybody, and from all styles and types of music, and the show kind of reminded me, I don't know if anybody else has said to you, it was kind of like the band's The Last Waltz, in a sense where you got all these guests. You got all these guests, and you're pairing them up in odd ways and doing things you wouldn't expect, That's kind of what the waltz was,
Well, and that's kind of what Big Sugar has been, it's not like... And, people say, oh, Big Sugar from the 90s, but we didn't really fit in at the time. We weren't included we weren't invited to the party a lot of the time. People were like, well, you guys play reggae. You guys kind of have to play blues. You're not alternative enough. Yeah. But then we were too rock and roll to play in blues places. And we were too this to be that, and too multicultural to be on rock radio. What are we talking about here, people? It's just music. Everybody just calm down. So, when you get to go back and look at it in hindsight, and when we were putting together a guest list for that show, oh, wow, Big Sugar, we can hang with Leroy Sibbles and the Bare Naked Ladies and Maestro Fresh West and a bunch of rednecks and a bunch of heavy metal dudes. And I mean, we can hang with everybody.
Yeah, no, it's cool.
Because we always did. You know what I mean? Our music touches on all of those things, and it's not out of character for us.
Yeah.
You know. So, and I love my Road Hammers anyway, man. We did a tribute to Billy Joe Shaver when he passed away this year. We did a video. You can put that in your
I'll check
in your
it out.
B-roll. Yeah. Being the Road Hammers doing George on a Fast Train. Yeah,
I mean, he's a very, I hate using this word, but he's a very underrated guitar player. People don't think of Jason McCoy as a guitar player, but man, he can play.
Makes sense. Yeah, all them dudes can play. And I had Clayton and Jason and anytime I get together with the Road Hammers to do something, it just sounds like a bunch of rednecks after last call.
It's great.
In the back of a crew cab cruising around. It's the worst, but it's the best.
Yeah,
and it happens without a lot of careful planning is the other beauty of it. I mean, everyone, because we're all working remotely right now, everyone sends me their video and their parts, and it sounds like we're all in one damn room.
But you guys are a good pair. You guys work well together.
Yeah, I imagine we'll do some more.
So Austin, like I mentioned, that's your home, and I've been there. I was there a while ago, but it's got a killer music community. And you've mentioned on some other interviews that, well, this is pre-COVID, obviously, that you're kind of you fit in there, but not on guitar. Like you'll show up and sit in on drums, or you sit in on bass. And so tell us a little bit about pre-COVID Austin music scene.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's first of all, it's very diverse. Like I said, there are people in Austin like, oh yeah, I know that. Oh, I know that dude, Grady, right? The heavy metal cowboy dude. Yeah, I know Grady, wicked guitar player. And someone will go, oh no, that's not the guy I mean. I mean the guy who plays steel guitar. He plays like Latin jazz on steel guitar. That guy? No. I'm thinking of the guy who plays bass in the Cuban son orchestra. That guy who plays bass like real Cuban style. Salsa and Cubano bass. That guy. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I think I saw him playing bass with Jay Styles at like a Grateful Dead kind of funky Monday night thing. Oh no, you're talking about the guy who plays the Simmons drum kit in that 80s funk dance floor funk thing. That dude? No, the dude from Big Sugar. That's the same dude.
That's awesome.
But it's the same town. That's the beauty of it. It's the same town. Like you can get away with that in Austin. It's encouraged. You're meant to misbehave that way.
When I went, which was I can't remember exactly. It was a little while ago. I was out at a club and I see Red Young. I'm sure you know who he is, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Friggin' amazing, B3 guy and tap dancing with his feet, just doing the whole thing. And it was a trio. I think it was drums, sax, and him, right? And at break, I went by myself to Austin, and so I was chatting with somebody at the bar, and told him, asking him, where do I go? And he goes, well, why don't you come over to my studio tomorrow? And so I go to his studio. It was Melford Milligan, Dave Seabury. I don't know if you know Dave Seabury, and Stefano Intellisano, the piano player. And that was the coolest thing, right? Because, I mean, you know these guys. Melford Milligan was with Storyville that played with Tommy Shannon and
Chris Layton,
Chris Layton and David Grissom. But so that kind of leads me to talking about Chris Layton and Grady and all this kind of stuff. How did you guys hook up and meet?
I met Chris Layton in the early 90s. It would have been about 1993. 500 Pounds had just come out, and it had come out on an American label, Silvertone.
That was the second
US.
record, right?
And we had toured a little bit, and we had just started. Anyway, our first gig out of Toronto, we got an agent at like 4 p.m. I had a meeting with a booking agent, Jeff Cohn, and he said, "Okay, well, if you're willing to go on a moment's notice, if I call you, you'll be able to pack up and you'll drive out of town." Yeah, man. Give us a call. Big Sugar's ready to go, man. We're ready to do some more shows. By the time I got home on the streetcar, he had left a voicemail message saying, "You're playing with the Archangels in Kitchener tonight, but you got to be there in like an hour and a half." Yeah.
I was there.
I
went to that show. So
with the Jayhawks.
Did you have like a Habs thing on your guitar? Like a Montreal Canadian sticker or something? I don't know. This is like a long time ago. Maybe there was,
I'll tell you.
Was there 3 bands?
Yes,
I saw
the
the Archangels at Lulu's. So it must have been their show.
You must have missed us because they put us on, the Archangels went on at midnight as things back in those days. The headliner went on at midnight. They put us on at like 7:30, 8 o'clock when the doors opened. And it was literally just like 200 barmaids putting ashtrays and peanuts on all the tables, right? Lulu's huge barn, like big country gig. And they would just putting out ashtrays and peanuts on all the tables. And they made us go on. It's like, well, this is our gig. So we had to set up in front of the opening act that was set up in front of the headliner. So we had about 4 feet of stage to set up a drum kit and a bass and a guitar rig. So I stood literally with the toes of my boots off the stage, and I had to put the mic coming in from a sideways angle because I couldn't put it in front. It was that ridiculous. So we were a bit disheartened, but we played our asses off. We played for an hour. And then when we got off to no applause because there was nobody there. And like, okay, well, you just do what's asked of you. And so we did our thing, man. We had a great set. But when I got off stage, Chris Layton and Charlie Sexton were playing pool in the green room, and they'd been watching our whole set. And Chris was right on me. He was like, "Hey, man, I'm Chris Layton." Well, what are y'all's names again? Like, Big Sugar. Big Sugar. Did you write some of those songs? Like, yeah, huh? Wow. You guys, you think y'all might want to, think you could play another set? You think y'all could do that again? I'm like, so Chris, the drummer of Archangels, goes and gets the promoter or the owner of Lulu's or whoever was booking the show, hauled him into the dressing room, introduced us and said, hey, can we get these guys to do another set? You think, could you do that? And he was like, "Oh, I'm not paying him another $1. Or I don't know. Maybe they gave us another $50, or they let us stay in our parking spot. I don't know. I don't remember that part of the negotiation. But it was a little unorthodox for the opening act of the opening act to get an encore. Chris was like, I don't know. Well, maybe give him wait 20 minutes and then go on and play again. So I had to say to my guys, look, okay, we just unpacked at lightning speed and got off the stage. Can we set it all up again and play it again? So we set it all up again with our boots hanging off the edge of the stage and played another set and played completely different songs because back then, we were used to playing for hours and hours and hours.
Right, sure.
So we played a completely different set of songs. And this time, Chris made sure that Tommy was there and Doyle Bramall was there, and the whole band watched our set.
Yeah, that was the Archangels.
Y'all played completely different songs. I'm like, What are y'all doing tomorrow night? I mean, we're playing in Waterloo tomorrow night. Think you might come and do that show with us too? Like, sure, man. We ended up doing about 10 shows with the Archangels.
That's killer.
All throughout Ontario. We went from Windsor all the way up to Kingston, Montreal, Quebec City. We did all those shows with them, including Toronto. Going on before the Jayhawks to almost nobody every night. But that was our first leg up. That was our first gig playing opening for people. And
I feel cool that I was there.
So that was our first show. That was our first one.
I just remember I think I still remember how loud the Archangels were.
But then Chris, after that, at the end of that tour, we stayed in touch. He's like, man, y'all need to come down to Austin, which I did on a few occasions. I came to Austin and he booked us gigs as Big Sugar, and I played with Chris and Tommy, and they learned a bunch of my songs. I learned a bunch of their songs, and we played at Continental Club and Antone's back in the day. And I had my introduction to Texas was the best possible. I had the best ambassador and host that you could possibly hope for.
I'll state the obvious for anybody who clearly doesn't know who we're talking about, but those two guys actually played with Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, they're a big part of that sound
that's
too.
How big of a deal those guys are. Oh, that's an amazing story. So that's cool. I didn't realize I kind of was there. I don't recall seeing it, but I was there. And I was there for something else that was even earlier. I'm going to get to it. I was there at Hess Village Jazz Festival when you were backing up Molly Johnson.
Oh.
Yeah. So I remember your early days. Let's jump back a little bit. Just you were a bass player before you were a guitar player, but let's go back to Windsor or even Winnipeg. I don't know exactly where you when you moved or what.
Windsor, I started. Yeah.
Okay,
Windsor,
so yeah, if you could share, like, how did you get into music?
That was in the. I'm going to date myself here, but that was in the 1970s. You know, I mean, rock and roll was, especially rock and roll radio. Windsor had one of the strongest rock and roll stations in North America at the time, CKLW. So I was hearing, you know, great album rock and roll all day, every day. My mom listened to CKLW. And then Detroit stations, you had a lot of great FM stations from Detroit, WRIF and WABX.
Cool,
and,
you remember the call letters.
W4,
Cool.
yeah, man. W4,
Cool.
they were great. And they were all rock stations. Like they'd play a whole side of a Jethro Tull record, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. They didn't care. They just played great rock and roll music. You'd hear, you know, side 2 of Band of Gypsies. You know, like, what?
Yeah.
You know, which all sounded normal at the time to us. So we were, as kids, we were highly influenced by that. And rock concerts were also the biggest ticket item at the time. You know, that's when arena rock really became an industry.
Yeah.
So we would go, you know, once a month, we'd go see, who are you going to go see? Queen, Rush, Aerosmith. I mean, all these bands played in Detroit, Led Zeppelin, they all played in Detroit. So we'd pack up and try to go see those shows. So, of course, as a bunch of kids, you know, everyone had older brothers who had drums or guitars or things like that. So all my friends were jamming at my buddy's house, and I just kind of went along to sit on the sidelines and look. I was a looky dude, just sitting there. I got nothing to do. I didn't have an older brother, so I was the odd man out. And they were like, "Well, nobody wants to play the bass, so you have to play the bass." I'm like, "The bass? Well, what? What's that? The bass? What's a bass?" They're like, "You know, like Paul McCartney." "Oh, yeah, well, he's pretty good." "Okay, yeah, so I'll play the bass." So there I was with this 4-string thing. I had no idea what to do with it. I just sort of looked at the guitar players.
That's
and
cool.
Put my finger here. Okay, well, I'm only going to play 1 string at a time. How hard can it be?
Only
but
4.
I got really deeply into it very quickly.
Cool.
Before I had graduated from grade school. Before I went on to high school, I was already working regularly. I was getting paid playing weekend nights, playing 2 nights a week and rehearsing a bunch of nights a week as a professional with dudes in their 20s, late 20s. Who
that's cool.
Professional gigging musician. I was like, you know, had crazy chops. I could read.
So it didn't come from, you know, like family, your parents. Your parents came from just your buddies were doing something cool and nobody could find a bass player. That's cool.
So I got stuck with the bass.
Yeah.
But then, you know, when I started to work at a very young age, you don't get to just play Black Sabbath songs or Rush songs. I mean, I could play all those. We memorized them note for note. We could play all of 2112. But you don't get to play that when you're working.
No.
So you're playing at dances. You have to learn disco songs. You have to learn pop songs, a Gordon Lightfoot song. You have to learn how to play a bunch of polkas and a bunch of tarantellas and marzukas and all these, like, you got to play all these different cultural musics because you're just playing at weddings, right?
Yeah.
Or you play in a bar, you're playing a lot of country songs in those days. You play a lot of country songs.
Cool.
That's the first time I heard a Willie Nelson song. It was like, they wanted to play Georgia.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know that one. Shoot. And then they started to try and show me, and I was like, "Oh, that's a lot more chord changes
There's
than
a lot
I'm
of
used
chord,
to."
There's a lot of changes.
Georgia. So, man, I went to the jukebox in the bar at the Detroit Tavern. I went to the jukebox, and they had Georgia on the jukebox. It was Willie Nelson. So I put my quarter in the jukebox and stood with my chin on the jukebox so I could hear the notes and feel them.
Man.
And I learned Georgia from the vibrations of a jukebox on my set break. Willie Nelson.
Cool,
and I learned it. And so then I went up and played it. And people, and the rest of the band was like, "Damn, how'd you do that? You couldn't play that. You couldn't play that song to save your life half an hour ago." I was like, "Oh no, I learned it."
Wow.
So
that's great.
Thank you, Willie. Yeah. And years later, decades later, Willie Nelson appears on a Grady record. So that's.
Oh shit.
I didn't tell him. I didn't tell him how I learned Georgia, but you know.
Oh, that's a great story. Yeah, I started playing with my dad. He had a wedding band, so I started playing at 15. I probably wasn't good enough to play, but I got to play with like some incredible musicians that he hired, so it's a great way to learn. You're just kind of like throwing in and, reading charts over somebody's shoulder and, try not to screw up.
It's good to get in when you're not ready. It's good.
Yeah. So I got to figure this part out because I've listened to a bunch of your interviews getting prepared for today. Like I said, I saw you at Hess Village playing with Molly Johnson. So the first time I heard you, you're kind of doing jazz swing stuff. Not kind of, that's what you were doing. And you had a unique style. I still remember you kind of doing it because I was watching you going, okay, well, he's not George Benson, but what he's doing is really cool. And he's kind of playing this, jazz standards that I was playing with my dad in his band. But you were just doing it so differently. So how many years in between you playing bass to playing guitar that well?
Well, let me see. Like I said, I started playing the bass in the 70s. And then by the mid 1980s, I started to take an interest in the guitar because
it's fast.
It allowed me to be a singer as well.
Yeah.
I mean, guitar is easier to play guitar and sing.
Yeah,
and I started writing my own songs. I started taking interest in blues music. Kelly Hoppy started showing me John Lee Hooker and Freddie King and Howlin' Wolf and, Hubert Sumlin and people like that. So I took a deep interest in the guitar. And I kind of felt like, well, I understand the bass. I know how to do that. And I've done that a lot. And I'll continue to do it. But here was a new challenge. So I picked up a guitar for the first time and started to, really learn to play the blues. Then when I moved into Toronto, I was just jobbing around doing whatever was required, which was, I was playing bass in a new wave band. And we had, I played with some funky pop artists and, did just whatever was required. When I got the gig with Molly, it was from my experience playing blues. I'd been seen around town playing the blues. And I don't know if she fully comprehended the difference between you can play a 12-bar blues to you can play a Duke Ellington song.
Yeah.
It helps if you're bluesy, it helps. Yeah. But that doesn't get you, it's not a ticket in, So I very quickly I was already a jazz fan.
Yeah.
I'd played lots of jazz on the bass. It was just a matter of translating that to guitar. And I go back to my learning to play Georgia off a jukebox. I learned the words because I was playing with a singer. Yeah. And now she's playing, Ellington, Count Basie. She's playing
exactly.
Ella
she was doing a lot of standards.
Yeah. So I started listening to Billie Holiday records and Ella Fitzgerald records and Donna Washington records and all these great jazz records and learning those songs from the lyrics up. So when I learned the words, then you can sit down with your guitar and ponder over those words and go, well, what's a nice way to voice a chord that goes with what's being said?
Shit.
So I took a very different approach to learning jazz. I didn't practice scales. Yeah. I couldn't burn over changes like that. We hired a sax guy. These guys could, I phrase more like a surf guitar player because I listen to the Shadows and the Ventures and Wayne Eddy and all the surf guys who were just playing the melodies on their guitar. But sometimes it was single note with a whammy bar. Yeah. Sometimes they played the whole chordal melody thing. They harmonized with themselves.
Yeah, you had the Bigsby thing going on.
Yeah. So I was the only jazz guitar player with a whammy bar out there. Yeah. So okay. But that's how I identified with the music, was through the lyrics. And Molly was infamous for forgetting the words. So it would get to the verse and she wouldn't sing. So we'd wheel around and play another solo. Yeah. It would get to the verse and she'd kind of back away again. So I got to where I had to know the words because I'd say, under a blanket of blue, under a blanket of blue. Just you and I beneath it. And so we did this whole Louis Armstrong and Ella Fitzgerald where I would just, like, how long, how's that evening train been gone? Like every time I would sing something and she would sing the rest of it. Oh, so that got to be, that was a great
the human teleprompter,
Oh man, it kept your brain sharp.
Oh, that's
because
cool.
some of
That
there's
makes
a lot
sense.
of words. There's a
Yeah.
lot of
Oh,
words
yeah.
in those songs.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. No, there are.
It was a great training.
Yeah. So this is kind of cool too. You, the original, and he was in and out of the band, but the original band was Al Cross and Terry Wilkens.
Yeah.
And Al Cross, probably seen him hundreds of times because just north of where I am in Newmarket, a guy, Lou Moore, and every Thursday at a club called Colonel Mustard's, he'd have like a guest performer, and Al was his drummer. So I've seen Al like tons of times. Most of the guests I've had, I was introduced to them there. You know, like Paul Chapman or Steve Patico and guys like that. So yeah, he's a great drummer and just unique, kind of like you. Like you guys must have really gelled when you first met because he played at all those gigs, backing up hundreds of guys. He'd play with snare, tom, hi-hat, and ride, kick drum and ride. That was it. You know, no floor tom, no crash cymbals. And he'd just make it work no matter what. You know?
Well, see, Al Cross is when we came together playing, he wasn't really coming from the jazz world. He'd been playing with Jane Seabury.
Okay, I didn't know that.
You know, like he had, big spiky hair and was playing electronic drums or whatever was the thing at the time. And he'd experimented with a bunch of different rock and roll and stuff. But we hooked up and we were really kindred spirits when we would go in his basement or on long drives after a gig or to a gig and just listen to cassette tapes of the Scatolites, and we would analyze what makes ska so amazing.
Cool.
Okay, we listen to surf music, listen to Link Ray, and go, okay, it sounds simple, but what makes this really great? Fats Domino, what makes this swing so hard? What is the secret? Yeah. So we got into some structural analysis of how these guys were creating this intense emotion, Little Richard to George Jones, whatever it was. That man was interested in the language of music and for the express purposes of making people feel stuff against their will. Because if you think of it, it's kind of what you do. You take people from where they are and make them feel something they weren't ready to feel.
Yeah, that's the best, man.
So we put in thousands of hours.
Oh, that's cool. I
dissecting
can see
music,
how you guys,
reggae, rock and roll, from no matter what it was, Cream and Hendrix to Count Basie or whatever it was. We learned that language of music together. And I mean, of course, Al has gone and taken it in his own direction. I can remember, I think he was back in Big Sugar when we put out Brothers and Sisters, Are You Ready? Okay. Which was a great getting back together with Al and playing with such an interactive drummer, the two of us. It was like a conversation always, Yeah. So here he's gone from playing jazz, like super swingy jazz, he was such a great student of jazz, to back to playing full-blown, Brothers and Sisters, Are You Ready? Ready! Al Cross, rocking. One of the loudest drummers. Didn't hit that hard, didn't have to. He just had a great technique and great tone. Yeah. And I recall there was a night, I don't think, obviously we didn't have a gig, but he got a call at dinner time. The drummer in the pit band of, I want to do like Les Miserables or the Phantom of the Opera or the Lion King, like one of those young street theaters.
Yeah, Ed Mervis stuff.
Yeah, the drummer in the pit band, his wife was having a baby and Al was on call, but it actually happened. And so the guy couldn't make the gig and Al got the call at 5:00. So he put on his black suit, his stick bag, went to the theater, sat down and sight read.
Oh, shit.
The Lion King or whatever it was, whatever show it was. Yeah. It's complicated. This isn't just your pants rock and roll. Yeah. You don't get to make anything up. You're reading a chart. And he was like, oh, well, I wasn't nervous because all the answers were written out right there for me. I turned the page and played what was on that page. And I thought, you're another class of musician, buddy. Because he could improvise and make up the most outlandish stuff and make it work in any situation. And then sit down and sight read The Lion King. I mean, that's
great. I did not know that. I didn't know
there's not that many
human
beings
technical.
walking. Not that many human beings walking the earth like Al Cross. And he spoiled me for drummers in the studio, honestly, because, most of recording a drummer is solving problems. Unfortunately, I hate to speak disparagingly of my favorite musicians, but even some of the greats, you sit down, it's like, why is the hi-hat the loudest freaking thing? It's like the hi-hat's in every microphone. I can't get a decent kick drum sound because there's so much hi-hat. The snare sound, I would put it louder in the mix, but all I get is hi-hat. Or there's a weird ringing on that one tom and it just sings through the whole song. Al Cross, that 100% of the time never, ever, ever happened.
That's cool.
You could set all the faders at 0 and he would listen back to a little playback and go, I feel like if I hit the floor tom just a bit harder,
he mixed himself.
He mixed himself.
Like
I'll
live.
hit the rack tom not as hard, but the floor tom I'll hit a bit harder. And I feel like the kick drum would feel better if I made the beater come off every time. Like he would change his technique to suit the recording. Yeah. The guy mixed himself. I could put Al Cross's faders at 0 and leave it. Every time I went back to it, it still sounded the same. It was perfectly balanced.
Oh, that's great.
I understand talking to Eddie Kramer that John Bonham was like that. He was that kind of drummer. Yeah. You could record John Bonham with one mic or a dozen mics. It didn't really make that much difference.
Oh, that's a cool story. Thanks for sharing that.
Himself. Yeah, he's a unique cat that way, where he really, every time he sat down in the studio, he mixes himself.
It's a good segue in the studio. So Molly Johnson kind of hooked you up. And for the record, she's not your blood sister. There's the same last name, but you're not related.
She's my blood sister. I don't know if she,
well, maybe
not your blood sister. But
she is your blood sister. Yeah,
she's my blood sister.
So your first album, your first album, which was titled yourself, Big Sugar. Yeah. She hooked you up, and tell us how that kind of happened, and then retell if you could, because you touched on it at the beginning, but I knew I wanted to talk about it later. For the Sleepin' Late, which is a really cool song, and I think that's probably the first one that I think of Big Sugar from.
I lost Jerry, hang on.
And that, how you did that video, that's a cool story.
Well, Molly, I guess you could say she hooked us up with our first record deal, but sort of unwittingly for us, because that first Big Sugar record was supposed to have Molly as the lead singer. I wasn't the lead singer. Molly was our singer. And we'd started making the record, and then she got a record deal for a band called The Infidels.
Right.
And that was going to be her return to rock and roll, and there was all kinds of excitement and money behind it, and it was beginning to be this big thing. So she wasn't really in a position to turn it down, but now she'd already committed to doing this thing with her jazz guys. So how was she gonna straddle that fence? And we're like, Molly, come on, man. We started this thing. No, it'll be great, Gordy. You're going to sing. Here's the thing. You're going to sing. I want you to go back to the Cameron house and write some songs and write some words for those songs that you guys play sometimes. Write some words, and I want you to sing them, and it's going to be great. And then she went to the record company and said, okay, Gordy J's going to sing. I'll sing on a couple of songs, but it's going to be great. You're going to love it. And the record company guy was like, she's very persuasive, put it that way. She somehow talked this guy into putting out a record where she only sang one song or two songs, maybe. Yeah, she bailed. But I mean, she didn't leave us, hang us out to dry. She made sure we kept the record deal. So we started out making records and being a band with me as the leader unwittingly. That wasn't what I was planning.
Hey. Things don't always go as planned, but I mean, your voice on Sleepin' Late is great. Like, that's a great recording.
See, because I was coming from playing the Matador a couple nights a week, singing country and Western. And
it's got that.
If I had to sing, I'd sit there and the high falsetto yodeling and stuff. Yeah, I was yodeling. Nights, you know what I mean? I was having to pay my rent, so it was just one of the flavors that we threw into the mix.
So there was people in the studio. Like, it was kind of like an audience in the studio. So it was basically a live record.
a couple of hundred people crammed in, like sitting on the floor all around us, all over the studio. They were very quiet while the song was playing.
Yeah.
But after the song was done, they were going nuts. No, we didn't really put any of the audience sound on the record.
Yeah, you don't really hear it at all on the record.
In hindsight, it's a bit of a shame because
Yeah.
it's easy to forget listening to that record. It's like, oh, right, there were like, there's 190 people in a space that legally probably could have hit 40.
Wow.
But in those days, you did stuff like that.
That's really amazing about you in a sense, because, well, no, not in a sense. It just really is, because you had this ability, like, this is your first friggin' album, and you literally just switched to guitar like 4 or 5 years prior.
Yeah.
And you're playing it friggin' live, and it sounds amazing. So it's like, it's pretty cool. Like, yeah.
We didn't get any
second.
second. We didn't get any second takes in real life. You know, we were playing 7 nights a week.
You're too badass,
There was
man. It's not
one
fair.
year, I remember around the time of, I don't remember what birthday it was probably in my late 20s. I was living in Toronto, and I had a week where I played, we can start counting. I played a matinee gig on Monday, and then played a late gig Monday night. I played a matinee gig Tuesday at the Toronto Racquetball Club for, CEOs playing racquetball, and we played jazz in their lounge. And then we went to Chicago's Roadhouse and played blues. 3 sets. So we played, 3 sets in the late evening, 3 sets at night at Chicago's Roadhouse. So we did that every night until the weekend, when Friday we did the matinee, and then Friday night we played at Chicago's. And then we went to the Matador and played country and rockabilly till 5 a.m. The next day I had to get up early because they played a noon matinee, playing acoustic guitar at the Cameron House. And then we played our evening gig at a film festival party. And then we played Chicago's. And then we played the Matador.
I'm exhausted.
And then Sunday morning, I got up and played a matinee at noon. And then we played at an early gig there was a bar down on the lake called Crooks. It was one of the only places open on a Sunday at night. So we played our blues like 3 sets at Crooks Sunday night. So when it got to the end of Sunday, I looked back at the week and went, oh my, that's... How many gigs did you play this week, man?
You did your 10,000 hours in 1 week.
Oh, yeah. But chops of steel, man, because in those days, you had to play, like back in the 80s, man, we played 5 45-minute sets. 5 45-minute sets, no repeats.
Wow.
Every night.
Man.
Dudes don't really get the chance to do that now.
It's a different world now, right? Because now the goal is, let me nail 60 seconds on Instagram. That's the goal now. That's a different world. So Ride Like Hell, which was a tune off the next album, 500 Pounds. To me, that's kind of when, your tone, that song. I mean, there's a lot of good jazz stuff that was similar to the first record on that record. But that tune, kind of your tone of what you're kind of known for now, just in my mind, I could be wrong. But that's when it started to come out. It was just killer. So do you remember how you recorded that guitar? What did you do differently from the first record to recording that song?
Well, it's the first record I produced.
Oh, okay, cool.
Tom Tremuth owned the record label, and Tom was a producer who is known to have done like prog rock and things like that in the late 70s. And then he went on to had hits with Honeymoon Suite. So, I mean, he was no stranger to a varied array of musical influences and sounds and stuff, but he did not get Big Sugar. He didn't get it. He got that it was popular and he got that it sounded good, but after doing the first record, I think when it came time to do our second record, I got to give him credit for sitting me down. This is not the meeting I thought we were going to have. We sat down in a restaurant and he said, look, I don't get what you do, but I think you're at the point where you get how to record what you do better than anybody else. So I'm going to let you do it. Here's your budget. Don't spend too much money. Don't take too much time, but I'm going to let you do this on your own. Okay.
That's cool.
Like, what?
Yeah,
like, what
man.
a vote of confidence. Again, that's something that doesn't happen now.
Yeah, wow.
The owner of the label sits you down and says, yeah, I think you're going to do this. Okay, man. So props to Tom Tremuth for giving me that first opportunity and giving me that vote of confidence. Now, it wasn't the smoothest recording process ever. I was new to it.
Yeah.
And I was working with an engineer who had very strong opinions and ideas, who I was at odds with most of the time, which also made me learn I had to understand why I wanted what I wanted. Mm-hmm. And that made me have to analyze and figure out, obviously nobody gets what I want. So I'm going to need to be able to verbalize it and actually get over there, turn some knobs till it does what I want it to do.
Yeah.
So it was my first time kind of trying to run things. And because I had this, like I said, this very adversarial relationship with the engineer, it also made me have to be more self-reliant. So in a strange way, I guess I can thank that son of a bitch. But anyway, it was just, at that point, it was also just me and Al Cross. We didn't have a band.
Oh yeah, you were playing bass on that too, eh?
Yeah, well, the bass player left. And it was just the two of us. We were hiring different guys, but we didn't have the guy that was the guy.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any money to pay anybody. It was just me and Al. So we went in for a week. Al and I played all the songs, drums and bass.
Yeah.
We knew the songs in our heads. So in our minds, there was an imaginary guitar player singing and soloing, and we just played. So Ride Like Hell is actually Al and I, me playing the bass, Al playing the drums. And then about a month later, I came back into Present Sound. Well, we had to have a week off or whatever, a month off to get some more money, or the studio was booked. We came back in, and I recorded all the guitars and vocals. Yeah. So Ride Like Hell sounds like a live off the floor jam, but it's not. The first couple of takes of Ride Like Hell, I did on a Stratocaster because I was playing a Stratocaster at the time a lot because I was a surf guitar guy. Yeah. And it sounded really like intense surf guitar, but I don't know, for whatever reason, we listened back to the playback and went, it's kind of almost too derivative. It sounds too much like Hendrix, or it's just too, we've heard this before. So I picked up a 335 with F holes. And as soon as I hit the toggle switch, that guitar just started playing itself. I mean, it just started screaming. It was so loud. And I thought, that's good. I'm going to ride the lightning here and try and harness that. If I can keep that in control and let it go out of control when it wants to, that'll be a sound. And that's when my Gibson guitar
craze
thing started, where I went, okay, there's something really intense happening here. And it's a big old Trainer amp. I had like a 412 Trainer thing. And so it was sort of halfway between a British sounding Marshall and an American sounding Fender. It was clean like a Fender for guitar people. But it also had that great overdrive sound that you got from Marshall amplifiers, the British tubes and all that stuff. So that was part of the sound. Unfortunately, those amps, burned up in a fire. They didn't survive through the mid '90s. They didn't make it.
You weren't using the Garnet yet back then.
No, the Garnet didn't happen till, I'm going to say, probably after the Heated record. 1999, I discovered the Garnet Herzog. I was so frustrated. Man, I was blowing up Marshall amps every show. I run them really hard.
So you're just going, straight in back on that record?
Yeah, I had no pedal. I didn't start using pedals till about 6 years ago, honestly.
Oh, okay.
I never used a pedal of any kind.
So were you playing, it was just you and Al doing the bass and drums for Big Ram?
I'm a Ram? Yeah, that is the name of it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, the whole record is just me and Al. We played drums and bass on the whole record.
Wow. And then the reggae thing starts to show in that tune.
Yeah, well, actually, if you know enough about reggae, you
No, I
discover
don't.
that most of on 500 pounds, almost every song has got a classic reggae bass line.
Okay.
I just took bass lines from running into the back door of the Bamboo or the Jerk Pit or going to reggae shows on weekends at Cultural Center and stuff. I knew all these great bass lines. Yeah, I was a Gary Lowe fan. I'd go see Gary Lowe play just to watch this dude play the bass. So I took a lot of those bass lines and put them into Big Sugar songs. Doom, 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 doom.
Okay.
Doom, doom,
I'll
doom,
listen
doom,
again.
doom, doom,
I'll
doom,
listen
doom,
again,
doom.
yeah.
There's a lot of the bass lines you hear on Gregory Isaac's song or Dennis Brown's song or like all these classic bass lines and rhythms.
Was the first album that he played with, was that the Hemi-Vision?
No, Dear Mr. Fantasy.
Oh, okay, the single, that EP thing.
Yeah, we did a 5-song EP after 500 pounds when Gary joined the band. We wanted to get right back in the studio and do some stuff, and it was just getting more supercharged and louder and
That was a
deeper
cool cover.
reggae.
That's a cool cover.
Louder, you know. So Gary, that's the first record Gary plays on.
I mean, I got to say for me, I mean, I know you play the song a lot, but Digging a Hole, you listen to it first and you go, this sounds pretty simple. But then you listen to it again and you realize how magic that tune is. Like the riff, the tone is killer. And then the beat, when you just listen to it, like the groove between the bass and the drums, you know, some people would go, oh, that's really simple. But it's such an infectious thing. It's kind of like, you know, like, I don't know, like Superstition or Billie Jean, you know, it's like this thing that just,
that's very astute of you, actually, because going in. Because going into making that record, I sat in an Italian club with my drummer at the time, Paul Brennan, and we listened to Staying Alive.
Okay.
And we were sitting at the bar listening to Staying Alive.
Yeah, it's just
and just listening to how consistent the groove was. And I pointed out to my drummer, that's the first drum loop.
Yeah, that was. I
to
saw
which he was like,
I saw the documentary.
No, it wasn't. Like, I knew because, and that wasn't widely known back then. You didn't read about that in a magazine. You'd learn that from talking to engineers who were there at the time. There were guys in Toronto who worked on that record. And the lore was, the band went back to Miami.
Yeah, it was
the singers were in London. The producer was over here. Like, they had to make a new theme song for that movie. Yeah. It was going to be a big movie. Night Fever was supposed to be the theme song, but they changed their mind at the last minute.
Yeah.
So they had to take, it's 4 bars or 8 bars of the drums from Night Fever. You can hear that same 8 bars when you listen to Night Fever. If you're clever, you know drums well enough, you can hear it and go, holy shit, that's Staying Alive. Because there's no drum fills in Staying Alive. Nothing changes. Doesn't change. So this is what we must do.
Oh, that's cool.
We're not going to have a drum loop because we don't know how to do that yet. You know, I mean, technology hadn't caught us yet. So what we're going to do is we'll take that mindset. We'll play it like with that level of consistency. So that was an influence on why, and that rhythm grid is also very meticulously planned. Although it sounds, there's guitars screaming and feeding back and a guy singing into a harp mic. There's a lot of randomness on it.
Yeah.
But it works because it's on a bed track, which is deadlocked solid. There's 2 maracas, and the maracas never play where the hi-hat plays. The maracas never hit where the snare hits.
See, everybody thinks stuff like that's simple, but it's not.
The bass never plays a bass note where the kick drum hits. Check that out.
That's why it works, man. Because
that's why it's that bass drum sounds huge. It's a bass drum.
It's only playing by itself.
It's always playing by itself. That's right. And same with the snare drum is always playing by itself.
Okay, so be honest. I don't think you ever get tired of playing that song.
No, I never got tired of playing it. In fact, recently I recorded that song with the Roadhammer.
Oh yeah?
I don't know what's going to happen with it.
Okay.
I got to talk to Jason. Maybe we'll put it out. Maybe they'll put it out. But I did Digging a Hole with the Roadhammers where I got to play the drums.
Oh, that's cool, man.
And of course, they played the guitars and bass, and
Yeah.
they all sang, and it's
like it hit me like a superstition, you know, because it's like, I mean, Stevie played the drums on that, right? You know, so
Yeah.
it was, you know, and it's and yeah, when you just hear it for the first time, you think it's, I don't want to, no disrespect
it's
to
deceptively
Stevie.
simple.
Yeah, it's deceptively. That's the
simple.
word. Deceptively simple. And I guess, you know, that's the recipe for making a great tune. Keep it deceptively simple.
And that is the approach we've taken ever since then. That really is the template for how we.
So he gets in the
produce
band,
music.
you know, that was a big ass tune for you. And you opened up for the Rolling Stones. So got to share some stories, some experience of doing that, because that's as big as you get.
By their Majesty's request, in fact. They, yeah, man, we were requested.
Oh, that's cool.
We were, our presence my presence had been requested. It's amazing how they're so British. It's startling. Alert the media. The Rolling Stones are so British. They have a very proper way of just doing things and referring to things. And I had a mutual friend who was a great friend of Charlie's and of Keith's and Ronnie's, and he had been a childhood chum of theirs. They were all collecting records and listening to blues at the same time. Clive went into art, and he became a great archivist and record collector, and had written some great stuff about early records and early American blues and things like that. So he was quite a scholarly cat, and he lived in Toronto. He was quite a bit older than me, and sort of took me under his wing as this great friend and benefactor.
Oh, wow.
And believe me, that guy, he paid my rent some months, and he gave me guitars to play when I had no guitars. He gave me all his old records when he converted over to digital, like when he burned everything onto CDs.
Yeah.
He gave me all his old vinyl, which as a result, you know, you hear Keith Richards talking about Chuck Berry and the early Chuck Berry records, and how he learned everything from old Bo Diddley records and Chuck Berry records, and those were like his Bible. I have those pages from the Bible in my house because Clive ended up with all the records because he was the archivist.
Oh, wow.
He ended up with everyone's records when the Stones no longer lived in England, and they were moving all about, and no one had their stuff in one place anymore. You weren't going to leave it at your mom and dad's. Clive ended up with all the records. So as a result, I probably have the piece of vinyl that Keith learned to play "Oh Carol" from. I have the vinyl that they listened to and said, this may be the last time. Oh, that's a great idea for a song. I have those records, the actual vinyl.
That's cool.
That those dudes, again, it's a story that doesn't sound true. How I end up at the crossroads of rock and roll history, I don't know. But I have those records, and I know it doesn't sound true, but when I was in Australia on tour with Satriani, we were in Melbourne. The Stones were in Melbourne. And after our show, we were hanging out in the dressing room at the theater, and Keith's guitar tech came in, who's quite a bit of a celebrity in his own right. He's, you know, the richest guitar player in the world's guitar tech. He prepares the man for the throne every night. He's the dude, right? Pierre hooks Keith's world up. And I'd met Pierre because we played shows with him, and you know, I met Pierre on a number of occasions, and I didn't assume he remembered me. It had been years, and we're in Australia. I mean, I don't expect to see a dude you know from a gig in Toronto. So I walked up to Pierre and I said, "Oh, hey, Pierre, man, it's Gordie Johnson, the Big Sugar. Listen, man, I don't know if you remember me." And he just looked at me and went, "Where are the records?"
Cool,
where are the records? My boss wants to know. Where are the records? I was like, your boss should know. You're never going to see them records on eBay. Those records are never going on any. They're not going to no record shows. Those will never be sold or traded or nothing.
Yeah.
Those records, all he's got to do is make the call, and then he gets the records back. That's just how it's going to be. He doesn't trade me something for them. I don't own them. I'm having them. I'm the keeper of the curator. I'm the keeper of the prized things. So if at any point that becomes important to somebody, then they'll get them back. But I thought that was just when you thought you'd been forgotten there on the periphery, the guy's guitar tech, all he had to say to me, where are the records? Oh, shit.
Cool.
I better take care of that record.
So what was that tour like?
Which one?
Well, opening up.
The Stones or the Satriani?
No,
they were both really cool.
The Stones, come on.
The Stones was amazing because I think it was because Charlie asked to have us. Charlie was a fan.
Yeah.
And I'd met Charlie on a number of occasions. And whenever the Stones would come to town to rehearse to Toronto, which is where
they did that a lot. Right.
They did all their staging and set up their tours from Toronto. Whenever they were around, I would get the call. You never knew when. Your presence has been requested. You've been asked to come around. Like, oh,
let's go.
Is it? Okay. Well, cool. So I'd go down to the Masonic and go up, and it was worse than airport security. I mean, after 9/11, remember, airport security used to just be like, you'd show your ticket and walk through. All of a sudden, there's like full body pat down and going through a metal detector and stuff to get into a Rolling Stones rehearsal. It was like,
cool.
And who are you here to see? I was like, I'm a friend of Charlie. Charlie who? I was like, he's this well-dressed little Englishman. He plays the drums sometimes. You might have seen him around. Which Charlie who? The fuck? So I got this like interrogation. I went to secondary. I had to sit in a chair. Well, this guy kind of roughed me up and gave me the once over. And like, no, who was it exactly again? You said you were here to see. I'm like, oh God. And then there himself, Charlie walked by. I was like, oh, Gordy. Sorry, mate. Oh, let him go. He's all right. And just walked me through the curtain. So I got to go behind the curtain and sit next to Charlie. I sat on the drum riser next to Charlie's hi-hat, and his people would just bring us little cups of espresso after every go-around of a song. They would you like another coffee? I
just figured, okay, you guys go on now, get your shit off, go. No, you were at rehearsals.
Yeah, I got to go to rehearsal.
Holy cow. That's way bigger than I thought.
Hanging around at rehearsal, and you'd see them parade people through there. I saw the Black Crowes came walking through there one day, who I would later become great friends with. I didn't know Chris at the time, but here's a guy with a large feather in his cowboy hat, wearing a velvet poncho or something. I was like, oh, that looks like Chris. You'd see these people paraded through there, but I didn't do that. I sat. Charlie he loved to converse, and we would talk about Marc Chagall, and we would talk about the finest leather brogan shoes you could have, and we talked about different fashion designers and automobile design. We talked about the Gullwing Mercedes, and Charlie had a Gullwing Mercedes. I'm like, wow, what's it like? What's that car like to drive? Well, I don't know, mate. I don't drive. You have a Gullwing Mercedes, but you don't drive. Think about that. What did you pay? Was it $180,000 car? Was it a $500,000 car now?
The Rolling Stones, man.
You don't drive. Well, no, from the early days, they always had someone to come around and fetch us. Did you? Oh, dear. Okay, so
were you playing stadiums? Or was it must have been.
Yeah, we played at the, I think it was the Air Canada Center.
That's an arena.
Skydome or Air Canada?
Yeah,
it was Air Canada Center. We played. But it was because Charlie asked for us. Charlie asked us to come around. And I had a couple of run-ins with Keith, and Keith was a big Sugar fan. He had Hemi-Vision, and they'd all heard 500 Pounds. And Charlie loved the jazz. Charlie loved Al Cross, and he loved Rafa, and he loved our jazzy reggae thing. He loved that. So he asked for us to be on the gig, I understand. And so, we got the Rolling Stones gig. Unbelievable. Of course, there's a lot of other machinations that happened. For our agent, obviously, had to get involved in our label. It's never as easy as that. Wow. But to everyone's credit, we got on the gig, and you expect it to be.
So how many shows did you do?
Just one.
Oh, it's just the Toronto one. Okay.
Just get on, play, get off, get your shit out of the way. Don't look at anybody. Don't talk to anybody. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that. The biggest rock and roll band in the world made us feel like they made us feel like
you were at the friggin' rehearsals.
Mick has Persian rugs all over the stage. Do you lads want us to roll those up, or do you want them left? I guess you could
leave them.
I guess. This will be your video director who runs the videos on the Jumbotron. Do you want to have a brief word with him? Like, what? We get to use the thing? It's like, well, if you have a great show, we have a great show, mate. We're worried about being too loud. They're like, no, not likely. You can play as loud as the Rolling Stones. You can't be louder than the Rolling Stones. Oh, fair enough. But they didn't. I mean, we played shows with bands who were our equals and contemporaries. And their sound guy would try to put gaff tape on the faders so you couldn't turn. I was like, no, we're not going to get in that pissing
Make
match.
it all
We're all
MIDI
professionals.
or something, so it sounds
No,
like shit.
man, they gave you the full lights, full sound. Just don't go louder than us. And you got the keys to the kingdom. Oh, by the way, catering's this way. Help yourself to the champagne.
Good for
Don't
you,
touch
man.
the shepherd's pie until Keith's had his fill. Once Keith's had the shepherd's pie, dig in. But if you break the crust, you're out. It'll be an evening with. There'll be no opening act. Don't pass go. Do not collect your $200. Don't break the crust on the shepherd's pie. But you're meant to walk around and have a good time. You're playing rock and roll, mate. You're playing on a show with the Rolling Stones. It's all right
Gordy,
to smile. It's all right to smile.
That's a song title. Don't break the crust.
But you're encouraged to like be seen having a good time. It's the Rolling Stones. Who has a better time? Who has more fun playing rock and roll than the Rolling Stones? So right off the bat, you're like, okay, but you're still nervous as hell because like it's the Rolling Stones we're playing with. And somebody came to our dressing room and said, your presence has been requested. And they took me and Gary back around to say hi to Charlie. Charlie wanted to say hi to us before the show. What? You remembered. He's like, yes, he remembered. So we got to hang out with Charlie, and then he came to our dressing room and met everybody. We got a picture taken with the Rolling Stones. Everybody got a hang. It was like they really went to the farthest degree to treat you like
what a story.
equals. And so, to my mind, is after that, anytime we're playing with a band who act like a bunch of dicks,
You can tell
I kind of feel like saying, hey, by the way, the Rolling Stones aren't dicks. What is your deal? What is your deal? Would you just calm down? These are the greatest, our greatest heroes in the world. And they're totally cool. And like I said, I'm fortunate, same thing. The guys in Rush. I stood on stage while Neil was sound checking and rehearsing. And
rest in peace.
Hey, how's it going? I stood on Rush's stage.
So what year was that show that you did at
99.
99.
Stones was 99, I think.
2012. I could be wrong in the year, but you suffered a bit from carpal tunnel syndrome,
Yes, I
which
did.
must have been pretty friggin' scary for you. But instead of just hunkering down, you put another project together, Sit Down Servant. Which was kind of from that because it was a duo, just you and drums, and you played a lot of slide and you played bass pedals.
Well, here's the thing. After I had the carpal tunnel surgery on my left hand, which is your fretting hand, which made like this angle was agony. I couldn't play, and I wasn't allowed to play for a couple of months, which was difficult. And then when I could play again, I had to start back slow.
Wow.
Scary and I thought,
shit.
well, now this could be really, like you're expected to play at a certain level of proficiency. If you're the dude in Big Sugar, you're kind of expected. If you're asking people to pay for a concert ticket, you want to give them what they want to see.
Yeah.
So I needed to get in shape. And this wasn't working. It's like all the muscle memory was gone. I had to start learning from scratch, which psychologically could be a bit of a thing.
Yeah.
So what I did instead was I got a steel guitar, but I was playing, 8-string necks in different various open tunings, and you could change instead of with levers and pedals, you would bend the bar or you could pull the strings from behind. But now, see, when your hand is like this, there's no stress here.
Yeah.
But your fingers are working. And it's a side-to-side wrist movement.
Okay.
So it was making my wrist strong and supple. I was thinking music. I was challenging my brain. I was too busy learning 8-string tunings to be depressed. when your mind is that busy.
So was that C9? Was it C9, just like a pedal stone? Or?
Yeah, I was playing like in a C6 tuning.
Okay.
And an A7 tuning.
Interesting.
And then I came up with a third tuning, which I eventually altered the tunings to my own, like an A minor with a major 7 over 8 strings. Then I also had like an A7 with a low C, so that I always had like a C9 chord with a low C. Yeah, anyway, I came up with these tunings.
But that helped you strengthen the hand. That's pretty cool.
Helped me strengthen the hand, but also my mind, because it was more of a psychological challenge than a physical one, right? Yeah. When you're already known to be doing something, it's like, it's not fair for me to go up and try and play a bit or get used to it, because I can't. Yeah. And I'm going to suck at it, so let's do something harder and different. So I was a huge organ jazz fan. And Austin is a B3 town, man. Every band's got a dude who plays a B3. Half of the bars have a B3 and Leslie in them. It's a thing here.
Yeah,
it's what you
Red
do.
Young, right? Red Young.
Red, Mike Flanagan, Jay Styles. There's dozens of guys.
Okay. Yeah.
They all play the B3. So that's what the music I was hearing every night. Every night I'd go somewhere, I'd hear somebody killing it.
Yeah.
So I thought, man, I wish I could do that. So I got some bass pedals and the steel guitar, and I'm like,
that's kind of cool. I like that.
Thing. Play the bass lines on the bass pedals, and then I could play these great jazz standards, anything you could think of, made these great dense chord voicing that you can't make on the guitar.
That's cool.
On the steel, because you have 8 strings and you have this bar. And so it really made me think music differently. I had to translate. It was like learning a new language, but you got keyboard intervals on your feet.
Yeah. Were you just using the left foot, like an organ player would?
No, because the organ players use one foot and their left hand. They play some notes, and the really low notes, they'll play like the anchor notes with their foot.
Right.
So it's this sort of boom, boom, boom. It's like this anchor, heel toe kind of thing.
Yeah, heel toe.
Which I didn't realize at the time. I thought, well, these guys are just, I saw Jimmy Smith, and he was like both feet going, like, oh, this is the bomb. So I started learning to play jazz standards on the bass pedals. And then I had organ players come out and sit down surfing and go, how are you doing that? I'm like,
shit.
No, I watched you doing it. No, dude, most of it's on the left hand. What are you doing? Like, oh, shit. You mean all this time? So
oh, wow.
That was it was a whole different discipline, which sort of, I got so deeply into that we ended up getting a tour of North America with George Thorogood.
Oh, that's cool.
Doing that. So we played more blues and gospel kind of stuff. Well, it's all with the steel guitar, right? I mean, I played a little bit of 6-string guitar, but it was all blues and gospel stuff. Yeah. Well, that was so much fun, and Thorogood was lovely, and he loved us, and they put us on every night. We got a sound check, and the crew tree, that's great. Their sax guy jammed with us.
You're brave.
It was beautiful, man. We did that, and I was starting to feel stronger.
Yeah,
and I started to challenge myself and play more outlandish experimental stuff. I started playing with Brandon Temple on the drums, who's another, like Al Cross, just an amazing musical mind. So the two of us started playing in Austin and doing highly experimental stuff. It was never the same way twice. But we got some gigs with Satriani.
That's cool.
We did a couple of gigs in Canada with them, and that turned into a world tour. Like, we went everywhere. We went to Germany and France and Belgium and Australia, the US, but with Satriani. And that was another case of, it was just the weirdest thing you could put on before any concert. And his whole band and crew, they watched our set every night, and we hung out in the bus after, and we listened to records all night, and went on winery tours and just hung out, and like all over the world with Satch. And I got to watch Joe Satriani light a guitar on fire every night. I mean, this guy's incredible. I don't think his records have ever done it justice. His records, of course, his records are legendary.
Yeah.
But when you see that man play, and you think I'm loud, nuh-uh. Joe Satch is like full strength rock and roll in the 70s loud. His Marshall stack, there's nothing just for show. His His Marshalls are,
So
there's no
you're-
plexiglass. He lights it up. So I got to, be in the presence of that every night. And they'd let me sit behind his cabinets in the show.
Oh,
I
that's
go
cool.
sit behind his rig and stand in Guitar World. No one's allowed back there, but I could sit there. I could watch all that stuff.
him.
So Satch is a huge
Man.
influence that way, just to hear somebody with that level of commitment, no matter what style of music they're playing. When you hear somebody who is a master at what they do, I mean, you can't help but rub off on you. So I had a fantastic opportunity, and he's been another good-humored gent that I can call or text on a whim and say, hey, man, you want to play a blues song with me on Tuesday Blues Day? Okay, sure, man. He just filmed it with his iPhone in his bedroom or something. It's like, he sent me his iPhone footage. It's like,
That's cool.
what?
I got to check
really
that one
happened?
out.
Yeah.
That is
It's
the
zany.
coolest rehabilitation program I've ever heard. It's like,
Pretty good.
I'm like, I got the temporal tunnel. I got to fix myself up here and go on world tour here. And
Man,
That's
sometimes
cool.
that's what it takes.
yeah, no, you're a cool guy.
Level of commitment.
And then you played bass opening up for ZZ Top and Wide Mouth Mason. I read
I
that on
did.
Wikipedia. Is that true?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So ZZ
Yeah,
Top.
I had produced a Wide Mouth record and had become great friends with those guys. They were lifelong pals. And they lost their bass player due to some dispute, and they had just got a ZZ Top tour. We had already started work on a new record for them, and then they had this falling out with their bass player. And I was friends with all those guys, and it was weird. And I was like, look at what can I do to help? What can I do? You know what I mean? I'm your bro. What can I do? We just got offered Cross Canada with ZZ Top.
Wow.
Okay, well, I know them dudes.
do that.
I could do that.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
so
cool.
I grabbed my basses and I went to Vancouver, and we rehearsed a couple of nights, did a couple of bar gigs, and then went and Cross Canada with ZZ Top. And got to become great friends with Billy Gibbons, who's another like major mentor, influence,
Local Austin guy.
and a fella who can, he'll drop a text message on my phone right when I need it. It just, he probably doesn't know that I needed it at the time, but he's been a great
That's great.
cheerleader and a huge fan of Grady. Like I was getting phone calls from all over the world. I got friends in Belgium going, I am at a Grady show. I'm at a ZZ Top show right now, listening to Grady in the changeover music.
So would Billy like show up at the Saxon Pub or Continental Club when Grady would play, or would that happen?
Well, I'd run into. I mean, you run into Billy around, like in Houston. We played at the Continental in Houston, and Billy would show up.
I didn't know there was one in Houston. Okay.
Yeah, and he lived in Houston. He didn't live here.
Oh, okay.
And I got to work with Billy on a Government Mule record. I produced Government Mule's
with Warren
records.
Haynes. Yeah.
And they wanted to we had a song. We just thought, man, if Warren could have a little guitar duel with anybody on this one, it would be Gibbons. So I called him up. Oh, it's a long shot. I mean, you can't just call the guy up. But it actually happened. It somehow, we managed to make it happen. I flew to LA with Warren, got in Matt Sorum's home recording studio.
Oh, cool.
And I got to sit between Warren Haynes and Billy Gibbons. I dialed in their tones, 2 Les Pauls. And then when the track was playing, I would go, and you, and you. And I would point and they would play. And I just, man, it does not get cool. Just when I thought it doesn't get cooler than this.
Yeah, you've done some pretty cool shit in your life, dude.
No, but then it did get cooler than that.
What?
If you can, as if that's not cool enough.
Yeah, that
You're
was
a guitar
cool.
player.
Yeah.
You're sitting between Warren Haynes and Billy Gibbons. They're both playing flame top Les Pauls.
Yeah.
And the track sounds killer. It's a song called Broke Down on the Brazos on the By a Thread record. Go check it out. There's Warren and Billy ripping it up. And after we were done, Billy invited us to come on up to the house, and he was gonna hold court. We were just gonna hang out and talk music and drink some beers. And okay, well, that's cool. So drove to Billy's house, we're hanging around, and Billy was one of the last ones there, and he shows up with groceries and goes in the kitchen, and I mean, he's dressed like Billy Gibbons. Like he's got that hat, the bandana, and then a hat on top of the hat, and a bunch of gold chains and black silk pajamas. And he goes in the kitchen and is like, asks if anybody's hungry, and everybody was like, no, I've eaten. I was like, I'm hungry. I could eat. So Gibbons, talking to me the whole time, prepares green tomatillo chicken enchiladas. Cool. And he's explaining to me how it's a thing of temperature zones where you need the chicken and the tomatillo and all this stuff. The chicken and the cheese and all this stuff, you put it under the broiler and it has to be a certain temperature. But the tomatillo sauce, you don't want it to get too hot because it dries out. So it's separate. It's heated separately, the tomatillo. And then the crema fresa is going to go on top of that, but it's got to be cold. Not so it's too thick. It has to be liquidy because you have to, break it down with some water. So it's all about textures and temperatures. And he handed me a cerveza and a plate of green chili enchiladas, chicken enchiladas. All right, now let's get down to business. Like, God damn. I recorded Billy Gibbons today, but really what I did was eat green chicken enchiladas prepared by Billy Gibbons. That's what I did today. I don't know what you did today, but that's what I did. So that goes down in history as
that's pretty cool.
Staying up all night talking about Muddy Waters and early days of ZZ Top and meeting BB King and regaling us with amazing stories all night, sitting around. And then, I got to catch a flight the next day, and it's always fitting to be the next day. So Gibbons, again, this is one of the greatest guitar players in history, and probably my biggest hero in terms of tone and everything. Fixes a bed for me to lie down. I was like, well, fellas should get a little bit of sleep because you got to catch your flight and you want to make sure you get to the airport. Give yourself enough time. He says to me, I'm like, what? Well, wait a sec. Where are you gonna? He crashed on the couch. He slept on a couch. I got up in the morning and there's a sleeping Gibbons on a couch, and he put me in a bed. I slept in a bed. What? You didn't have to. I'd have slept on the floor like the dog at the foot of the bed. What are you talking about?
Oh, man.
Why are you sleeping? You're Billy. Why are you sleeping on a couch? So
don't break the crust and Sleepy Gibbons.
Don't break the crust in Keith's shepherd's pie, and don't wake up a sleeping Gibbons, which I've also done on a number of occasions. Has woken a sleeping
I saw him cook on Daryl's house, so I know.
Oh, he does that.
Yeah, he was on. You're a finger pick guy, which is interesting. I play with a thumb pick, and then I guess our nail salons are all closed, but I used to get gels on the through, but now I'm all natural. But you have a little bit of a different style of playing. Like when you think thumb pick, like I'll think like I'm kind of a country guy, so I'll think like a Brent Mason or somebody like that, where you where it's mostly like a claw kind of a thing. But your hand is really kind of open, and you're playing a lot with the index. A lot of thumb guys like a Chet Atkins or whatever, it's more the two in the ring. But I see you kind of holding that index kind of wide and the thumb pick, and it's kind of that's I think where you get a lot of your rhythm from.
Well, it comes from banjo playing because I also play the banjo, and
sure, why not?
As much as I do like to play like that rolling claw hammer banjo is an interesting style, but I take more of an African banjo approach, which it's less of a classical kind of finger picking. Oh,
you put them on. I didn't see that you did that.
Yeah, I put those on.
There
for
you go. Oh, so you
so
used the real metal.
The beauty
ones.
of this is that you do get, because I'm a bass player, so I'm used to playing with my fingers.
Okay, yeah, the two.
So I get the finger kind of thing, but I get the benefit of that metal on metal. The metal strings and metal picks, part of that attack is also part of my sound, right?
Yeah,
it sends an incredibly strong signal to the amp, which is part of my tone.
Okay.
Then I use the thumb as a counter to that, so I can upstroke with these fingers, downstroke with the thumb, and you get this kind of...
Yeah, I've watched your hand do that, yeah.
It's like playing a washboard all of a sudden. So you get a rhythm. And then for reggae, it's just a slow down version of that where it's a downstroke, but then I have my own echo on the upstroke with these two.
Yeah. Wow. So you must use really, do you use thicker strings than most people do?
I have traditionally used a 14 through a 59. 14
through, wow. And you're tuned to standard?
Yeah, I use a lot of different tunings, but generally, even the standard. You know what? I have to confess, though, over the pandemic, like, I don't want to be so married to my thing and my technique and my gear that I'm just immovable. To be honest, not playing live on a stage, I was having trouble playing my strings. So I started playing 11 to 49 or something. I started stringing Fender guitars, especially with lighter strings.
That's a little bit more human if you're up to standard pitch.
Never played strings lighter than 14 to 59 though in my career. So yeah, see, no, 14 to 59 for me comes from like Link Ray and Dick Dale. Dick Dale played that gauge of strings. And Dick Dale played guitar like it was a mandolin, like he plays.
Wow, I did the real fast up down. Huh.
Which you can only really do when you have enough string tension. So your guitar tuned to standard.
Yeah.
You know, get that thing going?
Yeah, you don't want the sag there.
You don't want to try that with lighter string because it wows out of tune. It's hard to keep it. Huh. When your guitar's the string is just like this hard cable.
That's really cool about your sound. Yeah, because almost everybody goes the other way and they want as much flesh on the string for their tone, but you're going steel. I mean, you got a killer tone, so it's working for you. Well,
there's also, you have more variation with this because I have the metal on metal upstroke. Yeah. I can get real precise.
Oh, and then when you go the other way.
And then the other way, right? You get this claw hammer. I can also just hold the thumb like it's a flat pick, so I can get that going on. Yeah. And then if I want to play something jazzier, I still have two fingers. So I'll fan stroke.
So you use your pinky?
Yeah, I use these two as like the soft. It's like the soft pedal on a piano.
Yeah. That's the
so flash, if I'm playing a blues kind of rhythm.
Oh wow. That's tricky.
I can play
to get the pinky.
The loud, the downbeat with the metal, and then the upstrokes with the skin on strings. So I have this wide range of tonal possibilities. Oh, and by the way, you don't have to hang on to these. Yeah. I see guys put a pick in their mouth. I was like, standing on stage with a pick hanging out my mouth. Yeah. So these hang on by themselves. Yeah. I rarely, you don't throw these in the crowd because they're sharp pieces of metal. As the other, dude, throw me your pick. No. You need protective eyewear if I do that. Yeah. So, I hang on to them for years and years.
Oh, good for you. That's cool.
They hang on themselves. They just stay on.
So we touched on it. I asked it a bit, but the other part, I guess, of your recipe is the Herzog, the Garnet Herzog, which looks like an amp head, but you're using it more like an overdrive pedal, right?
It predates the distortion pedal. It's a distortion circuit invented so that Randy Bachman would stop blowing up his amp.
Well, because it was made in Winnipeg, right?
Yeah, dudes were bringing their amps into Gar, who was a TV repair guy. And TVs had tubes, amps had tubes. How different could they be? So Randy was bringing his amp in, and Gar was like, what are you doing? Like, how are you doing this to it every week? They were trying to overload the circuit and doing crazy stuff like putting tears in the speakers to make it sound distorted. All very wrong things to do. So Gar was like, well, look, I'll build you this thing. It's like a preamp. You crank this thing, but it sends a level signal into your amp, and then your amplifier just makes it louder.
Right.
That was a good idea in the 60s, but you know what? It remains a really good idea. Yeah. I took a look at that when I was blowing up Marshall amps all the time, and I was just blowing stuff up. I was like, it was getting so expensive and unreliable, and created a lot of anxiety when you don't know if you're going to get to the end of your set because of your tone. You're just going to start spewing smoke. So being a bass player, I had a collection of SVT heads, and SVT is like 400 tube watts. It's like 1,200 watts into 810 or whatever. So incredibly powerful amplifiers. I've used a PA head, a solid state 1,000-watt PA head. Whatever you can get to reproduce the sound at whatever volume you require, but imparts no tone. The SVT wouldn't distort ever. It was a bass amp. It wasn't made to do that. Lately, I've been using Roland Jazz Chorus.
Oh, those were cool. I remember those.
They're really cool. I mean, people, they got a reputation as being a shitty sounding amp, but the problem was a lot of shitty music was coming out of them. Is the problem. If you put good music through them, they sounded great. So what I would do is use the Garnet as my preamp. That's my tube stage. Okay. That's where that warmth and that compression and that saturation and that beauty that we love about tubes.
Yeah.
But very uncomplicated. I hate complicated. Okay. I like to be able to plug in. It has a volume in and a volume out.
Oh, damn.
Yep.
My battery died. And thanks so much for your time. This has been great. Amazing stories. Like I knew a lot of them, but some of these new ones are really cool.